Hi, welcome to the channel. Today's video we're going to be showing you how to hang a door. Right, here we are, we're at the customer's house now and we've got our door. First thing we've done is we've measured the frame, make sure we've got the right size door, the style that the customer wants. And the first thing we've got to do is cut the door down to size. So what we'll do is go inside, we'll measure the width of the door and the height of the door, then we'll come out and mark those measurements on this door. Right, so first thing we're going to do is going to measure the door, the opening for where the door's going to go. We're going to measure it in 3 spots, top, the middle and the bottom. I'm going to write those down. I'll measure the height as well. 826, that door looks like it might just fit in anyway. 824. Oh, the height as well. I'm going to have to allow a little bit for the thickness of the carpet when I'm measuring the height, and also you've got to make sure that your floor that you're opening onto is nice and level and that your door's not going to have to, you know, your floor's not rising up. It happens often, but I think I can see that we're okay when this door opens. It won't be catching on the carpet too much. Okay, so we're actually replacing the door here. There's been a door on here before. It's the first time we've been to this site and we've just been asked if you can just switch the door around so it opens onto this wall. This hinge that's been on here before, it's set down at 7 inches and the bottom one is at 8. What I like to do is set hinges down from the top at 6 inches and then from the bottom at 9. But I think to be in keeping with the rest of the house, I'll check them and make sure they're all the same. I may just go with the existing height. 8.5. Oh, 7.25. They're all different, so I'll put them at. That's madness. Okay, so I've measured the house. Every hinge has been put at a slightly different spot, so I'm just gonna measure down from the top of our door 6 inches. That's where that hinge will go there, and then we'll come up 9 inches to the bottom of the hinge. And that's where our hinge will go there. I think the reason why we do this is a smaller gap at the top and to the bottom is because our eyes are close, and this is the reason I've been told, is that so they look similar and they look pleasing to the eye when the hinges are set at these distances. If they're both the same, it looks a little bit strange. But this is what we're doing, it's the way we've done it for years, so we'll carry on. Okay, so this door we've got here, I'm going to call it a hollow door. It's not a solid door. It's not too heavy for us in this situation. These panels I think are stamped to make this pattern on there, and then it's got solid timber rails at both sides and across the bottom. The doors are marked with a lock style and a hinge style. It's marked there, lock. So what I like to do is I like to go up here and just put a H on both sides so I know which side I'm going to be putting the hinges on. The reason for that is that on the lock style in here, there'll be a solid block where we can fix our handle too. We've got our measurements here. This door, I think, will pretty much slide straight in. It's 826mm, and the biggest distance we had was 826mm, but what we want to do is leave 3mm either side of a gap. So ideally, we want to take 3mm off this side and 3mm off this side. So I think we'll just do that. But before we do that, I'm going to cut it down to length. Right, so before I cut it, I'm going to spin the door around. Just realised I nearly cut the top off the door. So you always want to trim from the bottom. So I'm just going to spin it round and we'll trim that down to size. So we're fortunate enough here to be able to trim this door down using this track saw. Makes it really simple. You could use circular saw. Make sure you cover your door up, a bit of masking tape or something just so you don't mark it, or you could use a hand saw, making sure you keep your hand saw upright. But we're fortunate enough to have this, so we're just going to crack on and cut it. Okay, so what I've done there is I've just taken the offcut that I've taken from the door, because I've trimmed too much off. I'm going to reinstate it to give this door some strength, and glue this back in. Right, so the door is now cut for height. We've got our timber support back in the bottom there. We've left that glue go off for a little while. We don't want to get any glue marks on the carpets in there. We've got our measurements. So we know that this door runs out slightly. We need to leave a gap for the hinges of about 3 mil and a gap on the other side. So we're going to take these measurements, scribe them across, keeping this, we're not going to trim this hinge style, we're going to keep that nice and flat to the existing frame, but the opposite side of the frame is slightly off, so we've got to cut a bit of an angle. So we've got to take 3 mil off there and about 5 mil off there. So let's just do that. Okay, we're just offering this door up for the first time. I feel like I'm going to have to trim it a little bit more. And I just use an old hinge or a spare hinge just as my gap for across the top. We want that 3 mil gap down the sides as well. And then down here, if you see, the door frame is slightly out, so I'm going to have to scribe to fit that. This is about the gap that we want, so I'm just going to mark it up. I'll be in your way. Wow. So a bit here. So that's where the hinge will be there. And then down here, that 9 inches up. So I'm just going to plane this little bit off with the electric plane. I'm going to go from about there down to there. And then there was a section here. I'll take a bit out of that, I'll feather it in, take a little bit more off, up to about here. Just some door holders. I've had these ones for a little while. Just simply a few pieces of wood, just screwed together, slightly bigger than the door. If I kick them at an angle, it holds it up straight. And sometimes I just knock a wedge in there if I've got a heavy door. It just holds it upright while we chisel out the hinge. Right, so there's a few ways of cutting out for these hinges. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to do it by hand using a chisel. And we're just putting a pair of hinges on these doors to match existing. Sometimes I put a pair and a half, you know, one in the middle to stop the door warping, but these doors are not known for warping too much. Once they're in, they're going to stay straight. So the first thing I'm going to do, take a sharp blade and just cut inside of this line, just to stop this wood from splintering or splitting up here when I use a chisel. Same on this side. You can run along the side here, but there's not really much point because the wood naturally splits that way anyway. So these are the hinges we're using on this job. If you look at the hinge, a little bit about the hinge. There's one of the leaves of the hinge has got this gap there. That's the one that goes on the door, and then the solid one goes on the frame. So we're just going to start chiseling it out. So a nice sharp chisel, you start just inside the line. just inside the line. Just piloting these screw holes. We actually shot another little video earlier on. That'll just be coming up in a second, and that's showing how to cut out a hinge using a hand router and a little jig that we've made. Right, I'm going to show you an alternative way of fitting a hinge onto a door using a router as opposed to a chisel. Yeah. Right, marking the hinge up 6 inches down from the top of the door, approximately. Now this is a perfect example of where using the router is much more advantageous than using the chisel, because we've got a big nasty knot there in this timber, and as you see, this router is going to make short work of it. Once the router's set up, you can just keep reusing this over and over again. So I've just used a knife there just to clean that corner out. You can get little tools, a corner chisel for doing that, which lines up and just hammers off. But very simply, just get rid of that little corner. Because we've got a round bit, it doesn't quite get into that far corner. So let's just make sure this fits, which it does perfectly and snug. There's no mess there we would have had if we'd used a hammer and chisel. And that is how I fit a hinge onto a door using a simple jig and a hand router. Alright, and so now, because we're moving this door around, I'm just drawing around it. And if you do draw around it with a pencil, just note that the pencil mark is slightly further away from the edge of the hinge, so you want to go just inside that. So when you start chiseling, don't chisel up to that line. And that's the bit we're moving. I'm just going to use this door lifter now just to lift it into place and mark, just double check that the hinges are in the right, they're marked up correctly. Oh, which they are. So what I'm using here is a door lifter. Some doors I like using it more than others. It can tend to pull or chip on these softer hollow doors, so be careful when you use it with those. And it just simply goes underneath and lifts up. You can get ones that stay in place and hold there for you. You could use it with a wedge. But there you have it. Nice simple little tool. Right, so door's on and it closes nice. Now it's just time to get our latch, our handles and our keep on. First thing I'm going to do is mark out for the latch, get that drilled, chiseled out, put that in, get the handles on, then we'll offer it up and do the same thing for the keep. I've marked up, like I mentioned before, there's a solid piece of wood inside these doors, so I've made sure that measuring up we're going to hit that solid piece of wood. We're on the lock style of the door, not the hinge style, and we've come up, in this case, 99 centimetres I think that is, and now I'm just going to mark this out where I want this to be. Okay, so what we've done there is just chiseled out a small section, just the depth of that front bit there, and now we're just going to drill a hole nice and straight down here. Well, that's not straight. To take this, and then I'm going to drill a 25mm hole, which is just about the width of that. We just got to mark off the centre and then drill through. That's 20mm. A little pilot hole. And now I'm going to just mark these out. So now what we've got to do is mark up where our hole's going to go for this part of the handle. We're going to drill a hole through there, and that's going to pass through the middle of the latch. So we'll just line it up, hold it square, and I'll just mark it in the middle there. So I'm going to drill through there and from the other side. Okay, so let's get the latch in. Make sure it works, and also that when you turn this, it springs back. If the latch is too tight inside and catches on the moving bits, it just won't work. So just checking that. What I'm doing here is I'm just putting a bit of pen on there, and then when I close the door, tie it up against there, and then what it's done is it's only left a faint little mark there, but that's where I know that the keep needs to be to keep the door firmly closed up against the stay there. Another way to do it is measure it. Right, so there we are, that's our door finished. Perfect. And thanks for watching. And if you've liked this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because it really helps us out on the channel, and we'll see you on the next one. You know, there's a knot right there. That's why these routers are fantastic, because they just cut through these knots, no trouble.